Hey everyone, I'm so glad to be here today. My name is Charles Abe, and I'm here with Dr. Eric Matey. He's one of the founders of GIAC. I'm really glad you're on the channel today, and I'm going to talk to Doc about a few things, get to know him a little bit, know what their vision was for setting up GIAC. And yeah, let's jump right into it. So, Doc, I'm very excited to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm alive and well as always. Thanks for taking time to interview me, to hear
Glad.
more about what GIEC is all about.
Glad. The pleasure is always mine.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I know you're a very busy guy, so let's jump right into it. What is GIAC?
So GIAC stands for Global Impact Accelerators, and as the name implies, um, one of our main missions is how do we ensure that we accelerate the growth, right, of the
Yeah,
pump entrepreneur, right, who is trying to make an impact among humanity in various forms, right? It could be in agriculture, it could be in the tech, it could be in health, it could be in marketing, finance, you name it. Um, myself and the other partners, one of our major, I'll say, that which really drives us is how do we identify that entrepreneur that really wants to make an impact, right? And how do we ensure that we serve as the right advisory committee, okay, for that individual? As you know, majority of the startups, about 95% of them do fail, right?
yeah.
How do we move that number a little bit lower? Okay, if we can serve these individuals who have a lot of passion, great ideas, taking those ideas from a dream to a reality by giving them the foundation that they need. And the foundation cannot just be a wish, right? The foundation has to be structured. Advisory is very important, making sure that we help them understand how to burn through their cash, making sure that they understand how to pivot. Sometimes they might have a great idea, but global issues may be going on that would need them to really pivot. And we bring in that expertise to ensure that they're able to pivot. So, in a nutshell, when we think about GIAC, Global Impact Accelerators, again, my partners, including Dr. Martin Quende and Akwesi Pipra, those are the things that keep us awake, making sure that we can really help that pumped entrepreneur bring their ideas to help humanity and make an impact.
Wow. You see, I was so excited to interview you. I jumped a very critical question. So, who is Dr. Eric Matey?
Yeah, yeah. That's a very great question. I remember being asked that question many, many years ago, right? When I was going through my pharmacy education, right? I walked into one of my preceptors' office and it's like, who are you? Okay. And it's one of those questions that it has different answers depending on when and where you're talking, right?
Right.
But for the purpose of today's conversation, who is Eric Mate? I am that individual who has seen the youth, especially in Africa, right, feeling so desperate that they would do anything to swim across the Mediterranean Ocean. Okay. Um, when somebody walks 500 miles, when somebody swims across an ocean, it is because, to me, from my point of view, they have given hope, right? They have no hope in where they are, right? So they're sitting, and again, I'm talking specifically about the African continent, which has one of the well-resourced continents, right? But our youth continue to really want to seek greener pastures away from the greens that you're sitting on, right? So Eric is that individual who wants to ensure that our youth will be able to um, do the best or see or help the youth around Africa come up with innovative ideas, okay, to add value to what we already have, to ensure that we can decrease that migration of the brain power that we have across the African continent to stay. That way we can develop the African continent and ensure that our youth are well employed.
Okay. That's a great answer, but I'm sure our viewers want to know who you are, what your background is. I'm calling
Okay.
you doctor, so I'm sure
Okay.
people are curious to know
All
he's a
right.
doctor in what does he do on a normal day? So if you want to go
I'll
deeper
share
into
more
that,
about that. I'll share more about that. So,
yes.
um, I'm a clinical pharmacogenomic pharmacist, by day. Okay. I'm a clinical pharmacogenomic pharmacist. I work for the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. One of the reasons why I chose this path when I came out of Howard University in 2004 was I remember there was a day when I was counseling a patient who had flown from a different part of the world to come to Mayo Clinic. And I said to the patient, "Are you sure you're taking your medications?" And that patient looked at me in the eye and said, "Dr. Mate, your hospital, although it's the number one hospital in the world, you're in the middle of a cornfield. I would not be here, right, if I wasn't taking my medications." So that got me thinking, and obviously you can tell I'm a thinker. Was there something else could be going on about medications that people, the subset of individuals who would take their medications and the medications will not result in a therapeutic response that we expect? Okay. Come to find out, there are some genetic differences, right, among individuals that can sometimes affect how a medications respond will result, or in some cases, potential adverse drug reactions or severe reactions that can affect an individual. So what I do is that I work with a lot of consultants, and then we provide pharmacogenomic testing to come up with an individual profile to help with ensuring that we're able to then tailor a patient medication in respect to those findings. Now, it is not every medication that has a drug gene interaction, but for the ones that we have what we usually call level one or level two evidence, we base those, clinical research, and then we translate that into implementation. So that is what I do.
More like customized,
Right,
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 for the
right,
individual.
right.
Okay,
You would have
okay,
remembered those, President Obama back in the day talked about precision medicine. So this is an extension of precision medicine, and there's a lot of innovative, ideas coming up in this space. And one of them is the concept of pharmacogenomics.
okay, okay. So, what inspired the creation of Global Impact Accelerator Corp?
So I think I mentioned that a little bit in the beginning, right?
Yes,
Where if you look at the number of startups that we have around the world, if you think about Africa, less than 1% of the funds that go into startup goes to Africa. And one of the reasons, or there are multiple reasons why this could be happening, but one of the major reasons has to do with structure, right? If you think about that entrepreneur or startup owner who is on the African continent, they will have great ideas, but in some cases, they do not have the right structure, right? So here again, one of the major reasons that the founders, so Dr. Martin, Lucrezi, and myself, we saw a need, which is how do we provide the right structure or platform to ensure that that individual that has a great idea will be able to then provide them with the advisory services, okay, meeting on a regular basis, having a cadence, ensuring that they're in a pressure cooker environment, right? That way, when you're in a pressure cooker environment, that is where you make popcorn, right? When in a pressure
yeah,
cooker environment, that is where you're able to make your diamonds, right? So we meet with these companies on a weekly basis. We try to understand their issues. And then in some cases, we bring in expert advisors to ensure that they're able to take their ideas from, again, a dream to become a reality. Okay. So in principle, I talk about advisory a lot because most people who come into this space to say, I want money, right? But what
yeah,
we've realized is that we can give you as much money as you want. If you don't have the right structure, you blow through the money and then you say, oh, I didn't know about this. I didn't know that I had to, I needed some advisory services. I needed to make sure that I had the right tax advisor. I needed to make sure that I had the right network of people to really help me from one point to the other. And that is what GIAC brings in, right? We look at the whole ecosystem and the list of things that entrepreneurs really need to take their vision to market. And those steps are what will really help our startups with to ensure that they are successful.
So can you take me through some of these processes that go on? For example, I'm a business entrepreneur, or I'm a
Mhm.
startup, or someone who is considering starting up a business. What does it entail to be part of GIAC? Is there an application process? How do we get in contact with you? What's the stages?
So that's a very good question. The first thing that we do is we have an interview, right? We interview the startup owners and their partners. During that startup, I would say session, we really want to understand, what problem is that organization solving? Okay, what impact is that organization going to create with that idea, right? We also want to make sure, are you already profitable? Okay, that goes a long way when we start thinking about investors, right? We also want to ensure that that organization or that entrepreneur or that startup has the basics, right? For what I would say, are they pumped? Okay, so those are some of the variables that we look at. And
Okay.
then the next step is if they pass that initial interview where we meet, we understand what they're doing, they also understand what we do and the services that we provide. If there is, I would say, a mesh, if both entities feel that we will be beneficial working together, then the next step is that we do send these companies a checklist of things that they need to accomplish. One of them is we try and create a model where they look at the SWOT analysis, right? So we go from what has worked well, what has not worked well. We create a SWOT analysis. And I think what all partners really believe in has to do with something called the VSCM model, right? And then, so we allow these companies to really take time to put their thoughts on paper. Then we meet with them, we go through the VSCM model with them to ensure that we have a short-term strategy, a long-term strategy, and and the most important thing here is that are they pumped, right?
Okay.
So in a nutshell, those are, the quick steps that we go through. And then once, the last M in that VSM model is the metrics. Moving forward, we ensure that when we meet, we are focusing on have you been able to execute? If not, is there a reason why we need to pivot? If not, is there something that we need to bring to the table to really help you, that entrepreneur, be successful, right? And I think based on the 34 companies that we have, I think that number just increased to about 37 recently. Based on the numbers that we have, right, the model is working for the organizations that we have adopted in the last 5 years. Okay. So I hope that answered your question, where
Yes, it does.
there's a system that we have in place, and the organizations that have been with us using the system have found it very helpful as they continue to grow and scale.
Wow. So let me ask, just as a spin-off of that previous question,
Right.
what do I stand to benefit joining GIAC? And what do you also start to benefit having me on GIAC if I'm a startup or an entrepreneur or whatever? Because I'm guessing it has to be a mutual or it has to be mutually beneficial.
Okay. I think I mentioned a number, 34 to 37 companies, right?
Yes.
So there's an ecosystem that once you join, you benefit from that ecosystem, right? I'm going to go off a little bit and talk about, they said AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence usually helps solve one unique problem, okay? Why is that? Okay, the artificial intelligence become a master of one specific issue, And then there is machine learning that will help bring other things together. So if you think about GIAC, right? If you think about GIAC, you as that company. So for instance, we have a company called Mr. Fish. Okay. Mr. Fish, we want Mr. Fish to focus on how best to acquire the fish that they need to supply to their customers. Okay. Now, if you think about what I just mentioned, to acquire the fish, they're going to need an infrastructure. How do you store the fish? In a refrigerator? In a smoker? How do you transport the fish? How do you ensure that there's logistics to ensure that you know where the fish is at every point in that delivery process?
Yeah.
Now, think about this. GIAC, we do have companies within our ecosystem that specializes in all of these aspects that I just talked about. Logistics, storage, transportation. So Mr. Fish only focuses on how to acquire fish. The rest is done within that ecosystem, and everybody leverages that ecosystem so that they become a master of the attacks and the impact that they're trying to create. Right?
Yeah.
So your question had to do with how do we benefit as GIAC?
Yes.
GIAC will usually take a small equity, okay? Right? That way, and so just hear what I just said. We don't charge for our services, but we do take an equity, right? Small equity between 1 to 5% and help you grow. Why? We believe that if the companies are successful, then we are also successful. So we are pumped to really ensure that the companies that are within our ecosystem are successful. Because at the end of the day, when they are successful, remember I didn't say if, because we truly believe that if we partner with you, we've already seen that you have a huge potential, that success is surely going to happen. Okay. So to summarize, the companies benefit from the ecosystem. They also benefit from our advisory services. They also benefit from the investors that we bring to the table. And then what we in turn do benefit from is, again, we take in a little bit of equity, 1 to 5%. Okay. And then at the end of the day, remember that initial vision that I talked about. If we're able to transform the African continent, that's a huge benefit to us at the end of the day, because then we're making the right impact.
Wow. That's really good to hear.
Mhm,
Now, how about your goal?
mhm,
It seems very lofty, but
mhm,
after speaking to the two previous partners, it seems achievable.
mhm.
How did you come about this goal to raise $1 billion and inject into Africa by gathering 100,000 diasporans who can each give $10,000 into this impact acceleration program?
So your question has to do with how did we come up with that goal?
Yes.
Um, Again, we are visionaries, right? And what we realize is that when you have the right amount of bucket of resource, now we're talking about money, right? Then we'll be able to really help that pumped entrepreneur not really worry about money, but to worry about how, if money was not a problem, if money was not an issue, how high can they go? Okay. And so, if one of our major goals is to create this bucket of funds, that way we can really help that entrepreneur not worry about funds. Remember, when I was also talking, I talked about less than 1% of the funds go to Africa. So, if we're able to create this bucket of money, then we'll be able to not help individuals in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, but across the African continent. And yet, just think about that. Think about all the ideas that people have on the African continent. But one of the major issues has to do with, how do I even get the funds to start? If we're able to take that barrier away, Okay. And we're able to resource these individuals and their teams and provide the right advisory services for them. Bring in the expertise that they need at the table. Just think about that. In less than 5 to 10 years, we're going to transform the African continent. And we at GIAC truly believe in that. And that is why we are so pumped with that goal of raising that fund, right? And recently, we just talked to another organization that shares our vision. That is even so exciting, right? That they are saying, how about everybody just contribute $200? Just think about that. Contribute $200 every month. You will not even realize that you are putting money into this pot. But before we know it, just think about it. 200 a month times 12. How much is that?
That's 2,400.
2,400. And let's say
Yeah.
you have 1,000 people do this for 5 years. Okay. And you're able to even put this into a fund that has compound interest uninterrupted. Okay. Think about how we'll be able to really help our entrepreneurs across the African continent. It's possible, and GIAC is going to do it.
Yeah. Wow. So something that comes to mind is, you know, everybody wants to go to Africa. One, because there's a lot of resources. One, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of investment opportunities, etc., etc. But a lot of people are not doing it yet because they are afraid. Based on all these horror stories they hear, investments going wrong, investments going bad, and etc. So I guess, or I think that GIAC is a very strategic entity that is going to help, because from what you are saying, you have all these vetting and making sure that these monies that people are contributing is going to go to a need and a use that would be very beneficial. Now, I just want to pick on something you said previously. Because of the ecosystem, Mr. Fish can focus on acquiring fish and acquiring the best fish. That is one thing I think is a problem with entrepreneurs. Normally it's a one-man show where the same person is the accountant, the same person is trying to source for logistics, move things around and all that. So that takes away from the core focus of the business. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and why it's important to have it that way?
So, Charles, you bring up a very unique point, okay, which has to do, I call it the doom of entrepreneurship. I'll bring it home by saying that growing up in Ghana, there were a number of businesses that I knew of. But by the time I got into adulthood, most of those companies were gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot.
And the reason was there was no generational wealth mindset. It was a sole proprietorship who, and there was one person who knew everything about the business. When that person got sick, the business would slow down. And this continues to be an issue not only in Ghana but across the African continent in most cases. What GIAC is doing is, one, we want to see your partners. So if you're an organization and you come in, we want to see your partners, right? What is the role of your partners? How do you make sure that one person is not getting 100% of zero, and that everybody understands the power of equity? Okay, that way, when that entrepreneur is no longer around, the company still continues to grow, right?
Yeah.
When I was growing up, there were people that I thought were millionaires in Ghana. Okay. But one storm comes through and that whole organization will crumple because there isn't a foundation. Like you mentioned, that person is the accountant, that person is, so when there are even changes in the laws, that person has no idea because they do not specialize. So if we go back to GIAC, GIAC is also trying to ensure that that investor that puts their money into an organization that we are serving as advisors, can go home and be rest assured that their funds are going to an organization that is diversified in terms of other people doing other things so that they can focus on what they are really good at? Great question, Charles. Great question. It's a major issue across the African continent. And GIAC, once again, is here to really help entrepreneurs see, what can you leave for your children? What can you leave for your great-grandchildren? What can you leave to ensure that we don't create a vacuum as soon as one person dies, and that we create a legacy when an individual dies, the company continues to grow.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a really great answer. And could you tell me a little bit about how you guys met as partners? I already asked Akwesi about that. He gave a very interesting story.
Right.
Let's hear you also on how you guys met as partners and what actually made it click. Because we meet so many people every day of our lives, whether on various channels. But what makes that ingredient that makes people connect and decide to want to push an agenda forward?
Right. I think, Kwesi and I have been friends for many years. We met in Rochester, Minnesota. We used to play soccer together. Our families, took
Know each
vacations
other.
together. We did a lot of things together between, let's say, 2005 until Kwesi moved to, I think, Atlanta and then California. But to really answer your question, Kwesi and I will meet every Sunday and talk about nothing, right? We'll meet for maybe an hour or two and talk about what impacts can we really create, right, on the African continent. And then we got one or two companies that we were just serving, as advisors for, and we learned through the process. One of those companies, right, had an offsite, and we, Kwesi and I, said we'll meet you all in California, and we spent a whole day with that organization, which is one of our portfolio companies, VIP Social. Now, when we were meeting with VIP Social in California, they said, hey, we do have an individual called Dr. Martin Kwende. Can we invite Martin to spend a day with us and understand what VIP Social is all about? And I was like, why not? We are learning. So Martin came to California. Can't remember the year, but I think it was around COVID or just before COVID. We met in California and it was amazing. Chrissy and I had been friends for a while. I don't want to say there was a group thing because his experience is a little bit different than my experience. And then Martin came in with a whole different way of also thinking, right? So to answer your question, our differences is our strength, right? So, Dr. Martin Kwende is in the financial space. I'm in the medical space, but I am also more in the, I would say, entrepreneurship and translational implementation space. Kwesi has been around with when you talk about procurement, when you talk about starting of businesses, right? And so we come in with different years of experience. And I think and I know for sure that the level of respect we have for each other, right, help us when we deliberate to listen, right? So there are times when we disagree to agree, right? We'll deliberate on an issue to make sure that we are tearing it apart, and then we'll put it together the best way to ensure that the companies that we serve will benefit from our decisions. Okay. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed working with Martin and Okwesi had to do with when COVID really hit and we had all these companies in our portfolio that they were worried about what they were going to do next, right? And we had, a retreat, okay, a virtual retreat. And I think we titled it Pivot, right? How do you pivot in the middle of a storm, right? Do you wait it out or do you go through it? They say most bulls, when there's a storm, they will dash through the storm, knowing that there's a calm at the end of that storm, right? So understanding and knowing some of these things, we were able to really work with our companies during COVID to ensure that how do you make sure you don't burn through your cash? How do you make sure that you pivot if everything you were doing was in person? How do you then do things virtually? Right? Just to mention a few things that we did with our portfolio companies that were able to be successful, sustain their business in the time of a major storm, right? But again, Charles, I think to answer your question, why do we really gel? I think it has to do with our past experience, our respect for each other, and again, the differences among us is our strength because we're able to draw on each other's experience to ensure that we bring that to the forefront to help the organizations that we serve.
I like how you coined that because
Mhm.
for a lot of people the differences is what keeps them apart. But for you
Right.
guys, you're rather able
Yes.
to work over them. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna give you the free range to talk to two kinds of people, maybe three. If I'm a diasporan and I'm looking to invest, what would you tell me today? Then on the flip side, as an entrepreneur, what would you tell me if I'm considering jumping onto the bandwagon for GIAC?
So for that investor who is looking to figure out where do you put your money, right? Um, I'll say look no further, right? Look no further, because we do have a track record, right? We do have a track record of ensuring that we are picking organizations that are serious, that want to make an impact, that has a structure, and if not, we help with all of those things, right? Um, for that investor, I also want to tell you on a yearly basis, GIAC puts together a trip. Okay. In the last year, we went to Ghana. We're going back to Ghana in October, from October, 17th to the 23rd of this year. Why do we do that? If you are putting money into GIAC, we want you to go see the impact that it's creating, right? Last year, the investors that we took to Ghana were amazed at one of the portfolio companies. One of them is called Max Barlow, and the impact that Max Barlow had on, the chain of individuals, all the way from, I would say, organizations that are making, coming in with $500,000 a year, all the way to the taxi driver who needs 100 cities to make sure that they're creating an environment for their community, right? I can go on and talk to you about Swoove, Tech Aid, the organizations on and on. But I think one of the things that I want to assure investors is that we want you to go see, right? So if you invest with us, we do have that opportunity for you to go and see what impact the funds that you're giving to GIAC is making. Okay. Um, when it comes to that um, startup or entrepreneur, if you are that entrepreneur that wants 100% of zero, GIAC is not a place for you. Okay. But if you are that entrepreneur that understands that sometimes 1% of 2 billion is better than 100% of one city, then GIAC is the place for you. Okay. Because I have worked with Dr. Martin Kwende, Kwesi Pipra, and myself, and I have seen the power of diversification, making sure that nobody's greedy, but making sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. So if you're that organization that is looking for an environment where the ecosystem will benefit you, that way you are not a master of everything, but a master of the idea that you have and the master of the impact that you want to make, and help, GIAC help you with that ecosystem, advisory, bring you the right investors to make sure that you're able to scale, make sure that you do have the opportunity to be in an educational environment where we can all learn, make sure that you have that offsite where we can really debrief on a yearly basis and restructure your business based on current projections as well as future projections. then GIAC is the place for you. So in sum, I think those are the things that I'll recommend and talk to that investor as well as that entrepreneur that is looking for a place to really nourish their ideas and funds and to grow and have a good return on their funds.
Well, thank you so much for that answer. Now I want to know what traction GIAC has done so far. Um, what are some of the impacts? And I'll give a little bit away here. I was on that trip you were talking about last year,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
I got to hear firsthand some of those impacts. But I'm
mhm.
sure the viewers would want to hear from you. What are
Right.
some of the impacts that GIAC is making, whether on the portfolio company side,
Mhm,
by helping companies move from point A to point B or
mhm,
achieve point
mhm.
X, and also impact in terms of Africa,
Right.
right? What traction have you made so far?
So, like I said, we have between 34 to 37 portfolio companies. And the reason I say that is that just recently, I think we brought in three more companies. So, but when we talk about impact, I always like to go to stories, right? Now, impact, let's think about advisory for one, right? Think about one of our first companies, VIP Social. In the middle of COVID, now VIP Social is, I want to call it more of a data platform. Okay, people might disagree with me, but it's more of a data platform. But the forward looking appears as though it is event
Event,
space, right? But it's a data platform. Now, before COVID, majority of their sales was through activities, which included, let's say, shows, okay, event planning, shows, and stuff like that. But if you all remember, during COVID, majority of these shows were shut down.
those there,
So how do you make money as an organization? Because it was a data platform, GIAC was able to work, right, with VIP Social to pivot and come into the market space. And we're able to then, just using that platform, allow individuals who had goods at home, their shops were closed, were able to then have sales through that platform. But that was from GIAC having that vision to say, how do we expand and put more fuel, right, to ensure that you do not die? Okay, if you're going back to the charcoal, right? We want to put more fuel so you don't die. And what we did was we were able to pivot that organization, right, into their market space. And not only did VIP Social survive, the other organizations that were selling their product also sustained and lived on post COVID, right? And that has become another aspect of VIP Social. Now, you talk about what impact have we had on the African continent. I want to take one of our organizations, Urban Jungle.
okay. Urban Jungle. Okay,
Okay, Urban Jungle is one of our portfolio companies that is in the, I'll say, I call them
good.
um, agro centric inner city company, right? Making sure they bring in the fresh fruits to that individual who wants to eat well. And as we all know, our health is our wealth.
Yeah,
And Urban Jungle helps with that. Over the past 5 years, what impact have we created? Talking about GIAC, we've been able to help Urban Jungle with the right amount of infusion of capital to expand. So, for instance, they used to have one location where they were farming. Now they've been able to expand the number of farms, meaning that they're able to bring in more crops. They are also into importing, I would say, variety of fruits and vegetables that the African market is interested in. We're able to help them expand by infusion of capital. Now, think about this. Anytime you hear the word expansion, it means they have to hire more people. So, so the unintended, right, benefit is that Now they are hiring more people. They are paying more people. They are making sure that these people are able to pay their kids' school fees, making sure that in the next 5 to 10 years, these individuals can then have a dream of also helping the African continent. And if you remember when I started, I said one of my passion has to do with how do we ensure that we don't turn our youth into swimmers who are swimming across the Mediterranean Ocean, right? It's good to swim, but not to be swimming across the Mediterranean Ocean. So think about the impact that GIAC is making in this space where we are empowering our youth through the collaboration with our portfolio companies to ensure that we stay on the African continent where the sunshine, the fruits are fresh, we are able to then make that impact. So again, to sum things up, when we talk about our entrepreneurs, and I only chose one, I mean, I can give you stories about Escape, right? That, there was a time when they were trying to really do a whole lot. There's nothing wrong with that. But with our dedicated time that we spent with Edith and her team, they were able to really hone in, go from crawl, walk, run, and fly. And I'm hoping that Edith at one point will be able to highlight some of the things that we're able to do with Escape when it comes to ensuring that they were able to grow at a pace that was beneficial to them. Okay. Yeah.
So we're almost about wrapping up. I really appreciate your time. If I gave you the free
Mhm,
space,
mhm.
is there any question you would want me to ask so you can answer and be able to portray an idea or something you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask about, or
Um,
just anything you want to share?
you mentioned something that had to do with a lot of people are worried and scared about the African continent and investing in the African continent. And I will be amiss if I did not
Debunk
eh,
that, or
I
yeah.
did not entertain that. Okay. I want to make sure that I entertain that because it's real. The reason why it is real is that most investors, most businesses usually do not have a structure. So, for instance, you might hear that there's a piece of business going on in some parts of Africa that's returning good funds. But usually, that individual that is working really hard does not have a structure. So, let's say the first 5 years they're doing very well. They don't have co-owners. They don't have, it's just a one-man
All the
show returning
Yeah,
good money. But the day that you go put money in on the 6th year, there's a storm, and that individual does not have a structure, nobody to go talk to, and they're trying to do so much, and the funds go away, right?
yeah.
Think about GIAC. If we do continue as an investor, as an entrepreneur, if you are able to have a structure, an ecosystem, individuals within the ecosystem that you can bounce ideas off. I'm not saying that will eliminate every problem, but that will substantially decrease the potential of these organizations failing.
Yeah.
And then the story of, oh, I took money to Africa and then it got swallowed by the sand, those stories will start going away. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, if you're within the community, come join us at GIAC so we can change that story so that in the next year, moving forward, the stories that we'll be sharing has to do with how GIAC, in conjunction with all the other partners, have been able to change that story to ensure that everybody is successful. Investors are making great returns on the funds they put in the continent, and the entrepreneurs, because they have a good structure, are also benefiting from the hard work that they put in.
Wow. Man, when you're having fun, time seems to fly too fast.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to have you on this interview. We've had so much fun. I've gotten to learn more about GIAC. Hey, folks, so if you're listening to this interview, you want to learn more about GIAC, go to www.giacgroup.com, right? And there's a lot of resources, a lot of information. The website is being revamped, so you're going to get a lot of value and be able to reach out and connect. Thank you so much, Dr. Eric Matey, for joining us today. It's been a wonderful interview. I'm really excited about the impact that GIAC is going to be doing in Africa in the next couple of years, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the interview. I really enjoyed it as well. Bye bye.
Bye.